So often we get questions about how do I get involved in the STR market? I don't have a ton of cash. I don't have a lot of credit. I want to get involved in it. They see your videos on here with the BNB Bootcamp. What does it start? What does it cost to get the BNB, kind of enterprise up? What does that look like from a capital investment standpoint?
So the biggest key, I think, that people need to be aware of is that you actually don't need to own property in order to get into the short-term rental space. You actually don't. And because we know that for a fact, because that's actually how we started our business, right? So, going back almost 4 years ago now, as soon as we learned how to get into the industry without having to use our own capital, that was a game changer for us. So the way we started was with a technique called rental arbitrage. It's probably very familiar to most people at this point, but just to reiterate what we're talking about, rather than buying a property and paying a mortgage to a bank, we actually rented other people's properties as if we were long-term tenants, and then simply re-rented the nights at a higher price than what it cost us to hold that property on a monthly basis. Now, as far as startup costs, the answer, of course, is it's obviously going to depend on a few different factors. So it's going to depend on location, what kind of property you're getting started with. But just to give some example and some context, we started, I think our first property was a 1-bed, 1-bath. We hustled all around town. We found pre-owned furnishings. I think we spent around $4,000 on our very first unit. And within the first 2 years, that gross, actually netted us around $15,000 in profit. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, at the scale we're at now, we have this systemized where we'll actually have investors pick up the cost of furnishing. So we actually don't even use our own capital to get into arbitrage deals at this point. So basically how that works is we'll sign a lease with a property owner. An investor will pay for the furnishings. So we have a deal with a homeowner where we'll pay a lease to them. And then after we pay all costs of operations, we'll chop, split 50-50 with an investor.
So really, guys, we're getting into deals with zero money in. It's a win-win for everyone. It's a win for the landlord because they're getting their rent. Places are taken care of, professionally cleaned, maintained. The investor, they're parking their cash into these deals where they're getting a 50% return off of our net profits. And then we're managing the property. And that's where we're literally getting into the deal with zero money down. That's how we're doing it now with our arbitrage deals. So that's one of the models that we are, coaching and training within the BNB Bootcamp training. Also, we've talked about partnerships before. Essentially, you're managing properties and just taking a cut of the profits coming out of there.
Yeah, and what's unique with partnerships, just to kind of segue a bit, you can set these deals up where you can literally have zero out-of-pocket expense on yourself. So the excuse of saying like, well, I'd love to get into this, but I don't have any money or I don't have a good credit or anything, that kind of doesn't really become valid anymore, because as soon as you understand how to control other people's properties, but not even just control them, how to get into them without even having to use any of your own resources, that is the game-changing moment. So
essentially, when we're looking at let's say there's a house that you can manage, the homeowner, understands you're going to be managing it as a short-term rental. It's their responsibility for all expenses. It's their responsibility to furnish the property. Of course, we help that whole process. And then really from there, we just manage it and take a cut for the services. And the majority of the cut would go to the homeowner, right? So they're literally having a hands-off approach, being in the short-term rental space, and we are just taking a cut for our management fee.
Yeah, I love that approach, guys. And let's talk about the scalability of this business. So obviously people that are watching us here on the channel, a lot of them have W-2s. They want the kind of quote unquote side hustle. Matthew's calling it the side empire now, which I love that connotation much better than side hustle, if you will. But so in a part-time capacity, people can do this. Talk about scalability as far as the arbitrage versus the partnership model. Obviously, one's going to have literally no out-of-pocket expense. The other one, you are on the hook for lease, you are on the hook for furniture. So from a scalability standpoint, can you kind of speak to that, for people that are maybe thinking about, doing this full time or, picking up 5 or 10 houses in that side empire household?
Yeah, and I like that he calls it a side empire, a side hustle.
That's new. Thank you, Matthew. You can go ahead and trademark that.
Yeah. Side hustles, like there's work involved in this, guys, but I like side empire because you can automate, scale it, without that hustle part of it, right? So I'm really liking that term.
Yeah. So we can speak pretty confidently about this because I remember reflecting back to when we first got started. We started with just one property. At that time, we had full-time work. I was working in finance as a currency trader.
I used to work in economic development, local municipality, like hour drive there, hour drive back for both of us. Like we get it, guys. Like that's exactly how we started, and we had our quote unquote side empire growing at that time.
In our first year, our goal was actually to add one new property per month to our portfolio. And because we set it as a goal, that's actually exactly what ended up happening. So essentially, we started with arbitrage, very, very lean in the beginning. So we were hustling, driving all over town, picking up used furnishings. So
renting a U-Haul, like we were literally the ones moving.
Yeah,
like
total grassroots, ground up, campaign. Yeah, love it.
So for us, like we got up to 5 units initially using that strategy with rental arbitrage, but then we kind of got into a snag because even though, yes, arbitrage is significantly cheaper than obviously having to buy a property and, outlay the cash for the asset and also the furnishings, there's still some capital intensiveness to it if you're using your own resources. And that's, we started having this conversation one day. We're like, well, if we want to grow faster, if we're going to have to keep waiting in order to have a big enough pool of money to then go recycle it and then go do another deal, it's just going to take too long. I'm an impatient person by nature, so it felt too slow for us. So we're sitting around one day, we're like, well, we want to grow faster, but if we have to do this, it's going to take forever. So then I had this crazy idea, and I was like, well, wait a minute. What if we actually didn't have to do the stuff that we're currently doing right now? Like, what if we didn't have to sign a lease, have a deposit, or even pay for furnishings? What would that look like? And then, because we started asking the question, we started getting different answers. And we're like, well, if we didn't have to put our own money into the deals anymore, well, then we could grow exponentially because we wouldn't have to use our own resources.
Essentially there, guys. So Michael's talking about the partnership model. This is how this came to be within our own business and really how we started scaling that way. Because, if we're not having to pay, a lease, not having to pay for furnishings or expenses or anything like that, like we would in the rental arbitrage model, it's essentially how many pieces of paper can you sign until you hit your goal? Essentially, if you're just splitting on revenue, there is no downside financially. There is reputational risk. Of course, I'm going to have that. There is always downsides in every deal. You have to perform on the property, else they're not going to keep you around, right? Sure. But at that point, the scalability was huge.
Yeah, because we didn't have to use our own money by partnering with the owner and having them pay for the furnishings. That's really the quote unquote secret, I guess you could say, is how we went from literally 5 units to today having this conversation, 45 units that we're currently managing and launching probably another, I don't know.
I think we're at 15 to 20 by the end of this year, potentially even more. So it's just like those are in the pipeline, like solid deals coming through.
Yeah. No, that is the secret sauce. And that's what's so innovative about what your guys' approach is and what you guys teach to, folks that go through your coaching process. And guys, if you're already interested, you've got questions for Michael and Katrina and their team, go ahead and reach out. Go ahead and email BNB Bootcamp at VIPfinancialeducation.com. Include your first, your last name, the best number to reach you at. And I understand you guys are handling these calls personally, and you guys have a limited membership per month on that. We'll talk about that later here in the video. But you guys are showing folks to exactly get where you guys are right now. You started off with 1 property, you're up to 45 right now, looking to be at close to 60 here by the end of the year. And just a handful of years, guys. How long have you been doing this? If you don't mind sharing with the audience that maybe hasn't seen you on here before. And guys, we'll drop the playlist, so go ahead and check out all the previous videos with these folks.
Yeah. So at this point, like at the time we're having this discussion, September 1st, 2022, we're just coming up on the 4-year mark as of October. So that's only within the last really 4 years that we've been able to, do what we've kind of done.
And the scalability point of it, like our first year, I believe we generated about 285,000 the first year that we started. Second year, I believe we went to 2.5, and now coming into the 4th year of doing this, we're about to cross over 5.5 million.
5.5 million in annual revenues.
Correct. In annual revenues of how we've scaled. And I just want to show the scalability side of it, because a lot of people are saying, can I really do this? Can I really, scale this as a true business? To have that short of a time frame We have students creating 6-figure businesses in under 6 months. Like that's the whole reason they're coming to our coaching, because I mean, it's taken us 4 years. It's taking a lot of our students even 6 months to a year to create these businesses from scratch, because they have obviously the shortcuts, they know the pitfalls, the systems, the process behind it, so they're able to go quicker.
Yeah, you guys have developed the roadmap. You've developed the blueprint, guys. We've had testimonial after testimonial of folks that have gone through their program and, are getting that 6-figure income really quickly out of the gate. We'll go ahead and drop those links below. So this is an active strategy. You can make a lot of money doing it, and the proof's in the pudding. These guys have made a ton of money doing it. They're showing others exactly how to do what they've done over the last almost 5 years at this point. So guys, always a pleasure. Looking forward to having you back on. Until next time, take care.
Thank you so much.
See you then.